Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thanks for the chance that given to me. Today I would like to present my research proposal. Thank you from my advisor, Professor Dr. Syarifuddin Dollah and Sir Hairil Anwar Korumput, and to my examiner, Prof. Dr. Basok Jabu and Mem Amra Aryani. And now I would like to present my research proposal. The title is Using Information Gap Method to Improve Student Speaking Skill. And now, this is the chapter 1 is introduction. Chapter 2 is review of literature, and chapter 3 is research method. And next slide is about background of the research. In education, English has become primary language of communication. Almost all the people from many countries around the world use it to communicate. In Indonesia, English is the first foreign language taught at school. Students of Indonesia learn English starting from kindergarten to higher education. The fact shows that English is important for the student to be learned at school. It has become more important because it is useful to transfer and gain knowledge, science, technology, art, and culture. It is also the key of students who wants to continue study abroad. So it is unnecessary for them to learn English continually from young age. Information gap is an interesting technique because it gives every student opportunity to speak. The advantage of information gap activities is that students are forced to negotiate meaning because they must make what they are saying comprehensible to others in order to accomplish the task. Moreover, information gap is usable and reflects the way we use language as a means of communication in real life. Richards and Platt state, without information gaps, classroom activities will be mechanical and artificial. The class activity will be dominated by the teacher, so the students became inactive in class. It is not effective to improve students' speaking ability. Research problem. The first is can the use of information gap method improve the student speaking skill? And second is what are the students' perception about information gap in improving their speaking skill? Objective of research. The first is to find out whether information gap method can improve students' speaking skill. And second, to find out students' perception about information gap in improving their speaking skill. Teaching speaking using information gap. Definition of information gap. Information gap is a useful activity which one person has information that other lacks. They must use the target language to share information. For instance, one student has the direction to a party and must give them to a classmate. Harmer states that information gap is one of speaking activity where students have different parts of information about the same subject and have to share this information in order for them to get whole information. Students should communicate each other in target language in order to get the information needed to be known by them to complete the assignment given by the teachers. The steps of the implementation. At the step of the implementation information gap. The first is understand the information that they have. The second is explain to one another the type of information they need. The third is orally communicate with their partners or members in the group the information they have to process. And next is ask question to clarify meaning. And next is ask for repetition as often as necessary. And the last is complete the gap in the information, whatever from it is required. The advantage of information gap. Information gap activities are useful for various reasons. Below, some research and specialists agree that benefits of using information gap activities in teaching English language skills. Hammer stated the information gap is a key to engagement of communicative purpose and decide to communicate information gap gives every student the opportunity to speak in the target language for an extended period of time, and students naturally produce more speech than they would otherwise. In addition, information gap students are forced to negotiate meaning because they must make what they are saying comprehensible to others in order to accomplish the task. So there is a need and reasons for the students to communicate through the task. The characteristic of information gap. Number one is gap. Number two, information exchange. Number three is curiosity. And number four, attractive activities. Speaking skill. Definition of speaking skill. Speaking is a process interaction between two or more people which producing a good understanding each other. As stated by Bynes says that oral communication is a process between speakers and listeners involving the productive skill of speaking and the receptive skill of understanding. Both the speakers and the listener have positive function to perform. The speakers has encoded the message to be conveyed in appropriate language while the listeners no less actively has to decode or interpret the message. Function of speaking. The first is talk as interaction. The second is talk as transaction. And the last is talk as a performance aspect of speaking. Number one is grammar. Number two, pronunciation. Number three is vocabulary. Number four, comprehension. Number five is fluency. Conceptual framework. Hypothesis based on some pertinent ideas and conceptual framework. In this research, the researchers states that hypothesis as follows. Null hypothesis. The use of information gap method cannot improve the student speaking skill. Alternative hypothesis. The use of information gap method can improve student speaking skill. Research design. The research design used one group post-test design, namely a pre-experimental study that will find out in a group that will select it at random and no stability and clarity. Test will find out in the group before being treated. Population and sample. The population of the study will take by the second year students of SMA Negeri 2 Selayar. There are 6 classes, 3 nature science class and 3 social class. Sample cluster random sampling is a type of sampling which researcher dividing the population into separate units or groups known as cluster. From some of these clusters, several samples were selected at random. The sample of this research chosen by the second year students of SMA Negeri 2 Selayar, which consists of 20 students per class. Research variable. The study have two variables, namely the dependent variable is speaking skill and the independent variable is the information gap method. Research instrument. The method is means that used to solve the problem. There are some methods of collecting data. They are test and questionnaire. In this case, the data will take from the source by employing test and questionnaire. Procedure of collecting data. Number one is pretest, number two treatment, number three post-test, number four questionnaire. Data collection technique. The quantitative data will take from the evaluation scores from speaking tests. Data will use to know the student achievement in speaking between students using information gap and without using information gap. The scores will obtain by assessing the student's speaking skill. The student's speaking skill will evaluate twice before cycle 1 and cycle 2. Data analysis techniques. Using SPSS after the data is collected. The data is then processed by using the SPSS 20 for Windows application, then uses descriptive analysis techniques, descriptive of statistical values, making diagrams or pictures about something. Here, data presenting in a form that is easier to understand or read, then using inferential statistical analysis, which includes data normality tests using the basis of decision making by Shapiro-Wilk. After the data is normality distributed, the hypothesis is tested using a pair sample t-test design. Thank you.